Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Before we start out, we have two visitors. And I'd like for you guys to step up and tell us what you're doing here and what troop you're from.
Hi, my name's Elliot Churchy.
Hi, my name is Mason Churchy.
We are both from Troop 23, Funkstown, Maryland, and we are here today to talk about situations and discussions in our city, and we were supposed to attend a council meeting for our city, and we're doing it for citizens in the community, Merit Badge.
Cool.
Very good.
Well, thank you guys. Welcome.
Yeah,
Yep.
welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
All right, first thing on the agenda is the Washington Goes Purple with Sheriff Mullendore and Vicki Sterling, the Director of Behavioral Health Services, and Councilmember Emily Keller.
Thank you.
I was going to diet, but it wouldn't let me. Well, if you will be started off, I'll be glad to. Washington Goes Purple is kind of a takeoff from Talbot County. Did this actually about 18 months ago. And it's a program to educate everyone, but primarily our youth, about the fact that prescribed pain medications are synthetic opiates. And so many of our people who have the addiction, and we have obviously a problem in Washington County and in our region, start out with abuse of prescription drugs, or I should say the misuse, not the abuse of. And so by getting that message out, we hope to, over time, be able to reduce our problem, and we're generations away from ever solving our problem, but if we don't start the education and awareness and really get people excited about the fact that we're actually trying to educate our youth not to use prescription drugs in the beginning, because there are many, many things that they can do. Take that prescription and hold on to it. They don't necessarily have to have it filled. Start out with a Tylenol or some other type of pain management. And then if you need it, go ahead and have it filled, but only use it for a short period of time, and make sure that they consult with a physician while they're using it. Often what happens is, if they're having surgery, even our youth that get injured in sports, they have surgery, there may be complications, and they're continuing to take the pain medication, and all of a sudden now they're miraculously healed, but they find out that they are addicted. And with the prescription drug monitoring program in place, it's very, very difficult to get the prescription drugs on the black market, so they turn to heroin, which is cheaper anyway, and so that is the beginning of most of our problems. I think Washington County is somewhat fortunate. Our numbers have been down somewhat over last year, and each year we hope to continue to drive that down, and I think that Washington Goes Purple is certainly going to be that catalyst that helps us to do that.
Well, Sheriff, we have, and I understand where your explanation of using prescription pain medication and what that can lead to. You'll find out that some people, like myself, my body doesn't like that, no matter what period. So I don't ever take it because my body just, for some reason, can't seem to function with it. So I'd rather do without. But do we have any kind of data on, especially in our community in Washington County, those who had some kind of traumatic injury where they became addicted or dependent to prescription opioids, as opposed to those who never had a prescription opioid or didn't get addicted through those means?
We don't have local data, but nationally, in sort of an average, they say about 80% start with prescription pain medication. And I would imagine that we'd find it the same here. We could look into it or keep that data. Even when we were in practice, we always do a history.
Okay,
And a lot of
right.
times, that's really what it starts. I mean, people don't just say, I'm gonna try heroin. They usually, like, it's usually, I'm in a friend's house and their mom has really cool pills in the cupboard and I'm gonna take them. I mean, everybody starts as a sports injury, but some people just start as recreational. It's a prescription. It was prescribed to somebody, so it must be safe. We knew where it came from. My mom took it and she was fine. And then they start doing it recreationally and get addicted. And some people get addicted quicker than others. Like you say, your body doesn't like it. And there's some people that do it the first time and think that, I mean, one account is, I've been touched by God. The movie Written Off, the boy said, it felt like God touched me. So, I mean, there definitely is a huge link between the two.
If you,
There's-
anecdotally, I can tell you, that unfortunately, I don't think it's anywhere near the majority, but there are a substantial amount of people who never even wanted to try recreational drugs. I know I've represented them. I know I have one girl that was involved in a motorcycle accident, riding the back of one and got rear-ended in North Carolina. She ended up doing some time out of her place for burglaries in order to support the heroin thing. But we had all the medical records in the world to show that's what happened. Another client from Frederick, whose psychiatrist ended up being his medical license taken away because of the prescribing habits that he had. And again, ended up in jail for similar reasons. But yeah, it happens, and when it happens that way, it's sort of like the AIDS patient that got it from a transfusion. People look at you and go, it's your fault. And
right.
there are that many people out there that it's not their fault.
Well, and that's the other portion of this too, is dispelling that myth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have that, and that they've made that decision to get
Right.
addicted, and that's absolutely not true in many cases.
Well, the other thing is, are we able to make any inroads with some of the prescribing practices of physicians in the area? Because I know I had a dental procedure done, and I got a prescription. I had it filled in case I didn't know what the weekend held, but it was there on the shelf if I needed it. I don't take any of that stuff because I'm a pilot, and I don't like to pass out while I'm flying. It's very unhealthy. But,
I don't like to fly when my
yeah,
pilot
right.
passes out.
But the quantity that I got from what I've read now that I'm more attuned to the whole opioid situation, I could have been addicted. If I had taken that entire prescription, I could be looking for my next, what am I going to do to keep this up, because I can't get it refilled. Sure.
If you look at Washington County on the map, the CDC has a prescription rate, and the average across the nation is 66.1 opioid prescriptions per 100 people. We're at 113.3, so we're double the national average in
Isn't
Washington
that
County.
that information's from,
That's-
2000?
16.
Yeah.
Did
So now everybody's required
Right,
to.
the good news, it's now
Yeah, the
mandatory.
PDMP,
Yeah.
the hospital, they're saying 7 days. Most doctors are doing 7-day prescriptions, so they aren't getting that large quantity. And the PDMP, everybody's required to run that. So if I go in and I've been to my dentist and he gave me an opioid, and I go to my general practitioner, he knows that I have that opioid. They're supposed to be running everyone. We've gone around and done education through Project Act Now with the health department, and we did prescription and prescriber education and gave them CDC booklets and done a lot of community outreach in that respect.
The hospital is participating in Washington Goes Purple, as well as other practices, Johns Hopkins, Hagerstown, and there are several individual practices that will be participating and passing out materials and going purple to show that community support as well.
And Valerie, I see the memo. Are we going to be able to go purple with the clock tower and the
Yeah,
pod
staff
and
is
the
looking into
fountain
everything that
and
we can
stuff
do.
like that?
I know that the lights are going to be provided, but whatever we can do to set up the lights in the parks, we're
And
gonna
I
do the
know
best that we can.
And I know the mayor will appreciate this, but it'll be good training, Mayor, for when we can go purple again when the Ravens get into the Super Bowl.
Well, now I don't know
We got
about
another
that.
like 100 years for that, I don't have to worry about that.
Black
We
and
did,
gold.
We did a rope light. I met with Mike Spiker, and there are 54 electronic light poles here either direction, so we sold them online. We have 4 left, and then that should be done by the end of the day. So they're going to install those for the month of September, so the square will be purple. And with our donation, we have a ribbon tag that says like in honor of or sponsored by. So that'll be downtown as well.
Can we, as a council, sponsor a road light and then, like
Do it
each one of
individually
those?
like I did.
Ooh, well, we could, or we could, show some unity and, do it together. It can't cost too much if we, I applaud each of you for, I think that this is a step definitely in the right direction. I really, in light of the Baltimore Magazine article, and, I think that we all know which one I'm referring to, I would really like to see this as the first step. I think the city needs to figure out a way. I don't know what else we can do to help as a city, but I think that it is, that article had a lot of truth to it. And I think that we need to recognize that as a city and do something about it. I think this is a definitely a forward step. And again, whether we're doing the clock tower purple, but I think that there's a lot more that we can do as city government. And no one knows the answers. We're not alone, as everybody in this room knows, but I think that article, we need to admit the fact that there is a problem, and we have to join forces and figure out how to
It seems
help.
to me one of the, and I don't have the solution, and maybe you all can chime in with the assistance, but as much as I appreciate going purple, and as much as I appreciate your comments about the Baltimore Magazine article, I see us going backwards as this community, not forwards. I mean, when I see a health department that no longer offers addiction counseling, am I right? I mean, in 2017, Washington County had addiction counseling at the health department on demand. Once we decided there was a true opioid crisis in our community, what did, I'm assuming, county government do? And that's my assumption. How did we lose?
Well,
I mean, I can address that.
Please, I think we all need to know. None of us really understand how that happened.
So, the state of Maryland for a very long time has said the health departments do not need to provide services, and we're gonna take you from grant funded to fee for service as a state agency. So we were a late adapter. Earl really dug his feet in and said, we're not converting. So other counties went out of business way before we did.
So we weren't the only county that offers, does not offer. So it's a state issue, not a county issue.
No, it's a state issue.
Because I've been blaming the county for that.
No.
the problem-
Now, the rich counties funded their county health department. So PG County made up the difference. Mid-Shore and the Eastern Shores, they got funding through the county. So some counties stepped in and said, no, we can't do that. This is what we're gonna do. Because last year, as of January 1st, we went fee for service, which means that we bill complete insurance and we have no grant funds to fall back on. So as we walked into this year, into FY18, we were at $1.2 million deficit. Because, a state employee
No,
and,
I understand. It's,
that sort of fee for service doesn't go with a state employee. And the plan going into FY18 and before I sort of got there was no plan that was followed through to ensure that there would be sustainability.
There actually is a program coming to Hagerstown. I was in conversation with a gentleman this afternoon for the second time. It's called Fresh Start. And it will actually be an inpatient process, which will be the first that we've had in the county. By the way, they want to work
They
with
came.
Washington Goes Purple as
They
well.
came to
so-
my-
I spoke with
Okay.
him today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, I think we're trying to fill those gaps. And I will tell you, in running the numbers for the last few years as far as the number of overdoses, Washington County is one of the few counties that actually have reduced their numbers and continue to do that. What you see are spikes sometimes, depending on, whether you're getting fentanyl in the area for a short period of time. And of course, the drug case that the Narcotics Task Force and DEA just culminated has a tremendous impact on our community when you take that much, particularly the fentanyl and the hefty heroin off the street. That has a tremendous impact.
That was
for
the
it.
other thing I learned, is I thought most people who were doing fentanyl didn't know they were doing fentanyl. But-
Well, you know, they either mix it or they take it as pure fentanyl, one of the two. And you can do both. And what we have, we actually have what's called OD map. And when there are spikes in, it's actually set for 3 within a 24-hour period where you have overdoses in a specific area and so forth. It gives us notifications so that we know to concentrate on that area, that there's something going on. And so, you know, we're able to try to identify that.
And Mayor, I want to commend the sheriff's department, and candidly, I think Doug will probably agree with me, the whole reaction of the criminal justice system in an effort to understand what needs to be done. And of course, we're all struggling with money.
Absolutely. Well, and hopefully someday as the lawsuit moves forward against pharma, we can reap some benefits with that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in, you know, sponsoring again, you know, if the rest
How
of
much
the
is it?
council, yeah.
25.
We could all pitch in $5.
I
Yeah.
think we could do that.
I think so
I'm certainly
too.
willing
I mean, I
to
think
do
it would, you know,
Thank you.
again, I go back to the fact
So
that,
what
you know,
I'm
you
saying.
are the representation of our council and our city in fighting this, you know, opioid epidemic, and I, you know, admired that before I was on the council. So I just think that we as a city need to figure out how to do it together and help you and stand in line with you, and just like it was said, you know, take back our community. And I think that there are great programs in place. I think that there's a lot of pockets of great things happening, but I think there needs to be a collaborative effort, figure out
Community effort.
funding, figure out, you know, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to do the same exact thing, and I don't know how much, you know, what we can do, you know, whether it's a social worker teamed up with a police officer to help, you know, a peer recovery coach, I don't know. I mean, there's got to be something that we can do that you feel our support and the city's support behind you. That's-
Well, I think the big thing is though, and we, everybody, not just city of Hagerstown or county or state or even nation, we've failed to educate our children and our communities. And that's like a big piece. I think everybody's been like reactive because we are in a crisis, but we're not talking to the kids, we're not talking to the parents. I'm still going out and people don't understand. Or I'll say, here's a disposal kit. Well, I just flush them.
Wine
Or I
Down
just throw
Friday,
them in the
that's what
trash.
Everyone said, I just stick them in the trash.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I
you need
just-
to get rid of the medications responsibly. So there's a lot that still isn't kind of clicking.
Which is why this is such a great
Yeah.
step in the right
Yeah.
direction.
And I'll tell you, the community support has been incredible, because I think now we're focusing on talking to kids and talking to parents and talking about safe disposal and the importance of educating our youth. It's really a no-brainer to get behind. It's not controversial. It's important. And I think the show, you know, we keep talking about going purple, and obviously everything turning purple is a great community display of unity, but that's like the least important part of Washington Goes Purple. The education piece and getting out materials and being in schools and talking to kids is the most important. But that show of unity, the show of, I mean, the Suns are going purple, the mall is going purple, the counties are going purple, the buildings are going purple. There are like iconic places all around that will be purple. Just looking around and seeing that and seeing we're all in this together. We all truly are in this together. And I think that while it is the least important part, that hope and that message of unity is important right now, because you know, people need to see that people care and are trying and are working every single day. Like,
And will be a great response to the Baltimore Magazine article.
yes. So I guess our ask, our ask is, I've been emailing with Rodney somewhat and Eric Dykey and Mark with, you know, to try to figure out, you know, what we can be purple, what we can do purple, and with the rope lights, you know, we'll need Public Works to put them up, because I don't know how to do that. And so we're asking.
Oh, come on, we
that
can get,
you guys-
we can get a ladder.
I got ladders.
I don't think Valerie
We
would
got a
let
ladder
us
to
get
pick
on a ladder downtown, but I guess that is our ask, that you allow us to work with the city to do that. The same Williamsport is going purple, and we're representing to the county again, but we anticipate that they will be doing the same thing, so we're just
I mean, yeah, my support.
asking
Yes.
Yes.
for services.
You have my support. And lose.
So we're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you for
much.
everything.
Appreciate it.
Update on the Massey property, Rodney?
Good afternoon.
Good
afternoon.
Hello. Okay, so just an update, we're moving forward with the proposal for the Massey Building through the competitive negotiated sale process. And the buyer will be renovating this building into a retail store to attract customers to our downtown, which is awesome. And so where we're at right now, there's the easement going through the parking lot. And after reviewing several options with not only the library board, the county commissioners, the purchaser himself, everyone is in agreement to move the access road far to the right to parallel the Thomas Kennedy Park. The purchaser is in agreement to pay for the relocation of the road, and it'll make a nice clean boundary for the parking lot. It'll maximize the parking spaces for him as well. I will be presenting that purchase agreement in a later regular session, and Ronnie's going to talk a little bit more in detail as far as what everything entails with moving the road.
So this drawing's in your packet, but just to make sure everybody understands. So the city owns this property. It's kind of U-shaped. And you can see on the aerial photograph, it's underneath here, the road kind of splits the parcel in half. So as Danielle was saying, we proposed several things to the library and the county commissioners, because the county commissioners have an easement for the road that's here. We proposed eliminating the road altogether. We proposed having some sort of a shared arrangement, and then the third thing was to relocate this road. But clearly, as Danielle said, everybody agreed that the road should be moved. So this is kind of a concept plan of what it would look like then. The purchaser then would have this parking lot that has about 40 spaces. The access road would go into the library, and it lines up really well with the access aisle that's already in the library. And then the Thomas Kennedy Park would be at the east end of the property. And then this area in blue is about 8 feet lower than the rest of the park, and it really has not much value. And what we're suggesting is that that piece of land be transferred to the adjacent property owner, so that the city would no longer own it, and we would like to do an ordinance to convey that piece of property to them. So basically, this is the layout that's being proposed. Again, the driveway will be relocated at no expense to the city. This piece of land would be conveyed, and then the park would be constructed. We've started on the park. They've started some of the preliminary work, and I think a ribbon cutting. Mr. Reifert and Monda are here. They can tell you more details. There's a ribbon cutting coming up, and also the groundbreaking is what I should say. The groundbreaking is coming up soon, and the ribbon cutting would be later this fall.
So, quick question, the 40-unit parking spaces, does that convey with the Massey building to the new owner?
That's the proposal.
Okay. Is there any kind of easement that we could put on that to ensure that, I don't anticipate any problem, currently, but if property changes hand down the road, that B'nai Abraham could continue to use that parking lot for their evening services? because I think they depend on that now.
I guess we'd have to check with the city attorney to see if there's a covenant that can be
It's the kind
placed
of
in the
thing,
deed
I would hate,
of
I would
conveyance.
hate to see, 2 or 3 owners down the road, cars towed at owner's expense, and everybody's getting wheeled out of that parking lot when they're there for services.
Is this current purchaser aware of that and willing to allow them to use the lot?
He did speak
Okay.
about working with them.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would note that really, right now, the lot says you can't park there, and the library has been very cooperative with allowing us, the synagogue, to park there. So, I mean, I don't think you could make it a condition. I would like to think that the new owners would be more than willing to work with off-hours stuff. But fortunately, the library's been very kind with things. In your worst-case scenarios, you pay a couple dollars. We're blessed to have parking lot there, that's for sure.
Yeah, they raise the gates, don't they?
Sometimes, for specific times, they'll raise the gates. But even if they don't raise the gates, that, the synagogue survived for a long time with parking one street only, essentially. So it's been very nice since the library lot. And that lot is used. People do park there, you're absolutely correct. And, the vast majority of uses for the synagogue generally is Friday nights and/or Saturday mornings at worst. And so hopefully it can be worked with. And then twice a year for the high holidays. But the high holidays, I think we've always had the library put the gate up for the high holidays. So, when it's really something to be able to be taken care of, I think, with the new owners.
So we're good with the changing of the driveway and all that?
And the land transfer,
Right.
clear, because that will come back to you.
Yeah.
All right.
Ribbon cutting? You want to talk about that?
Thank you, Rodney. Mark your calendars, July the 25th, it's a Wednesday night, 5 o'clock is an official groundbreaking ceremony with the City of Hagerstown, the Thomas Kennedy Center, members of the delegation, and the keynote speaker will be Governor Larry Hogan. So he'll be doing this 5 o'clock event, and then at 5:30, he'll be hustling out to go to the municipal stadium for an event there. You'll see in your packets eventually an official press release put out by Wes Decker and the City of Hagerstown and the Thomas Kennedy Center. So I hope that you all can attend and help us out with the gold shovels that Rodney is providing to turn the dirt over at this great project, which has gotten some national attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it? Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, new economic development incentive fund.
Thank you. I have outlined some information that would help us with a discussion of the possible components of the new Economic Development Incentive Fund. So I want to take just a little bit of time and walk you through the history of the First Third Grant Program and to quantify the number of businesses and/or homeowners that were helped. So I want to turn to the page, I think the fourth page in on the packet, which is page 12, section 5 of the budget book. And there is a chart that shows 1.5 million in total, and I'm going to walk you through each and quantify participation in each of these lines. So the first is 1.2 million in the commercial component of the First Third Grant Program. This is really 950,000 if you exclude Catalyst Project Number 1, as we redirected some of the funding on that. There were a total of 10 projects supported by this. 2 were in the range of 240 to 250. That was the Patterson Hotel as well as WLR at 4353 South Potomac. We had 1 project at 150 And then we had 7 projects that were in the range of $30,000 to $50,000, including Virginia Avenue project of Vardo Yard, King Street Professional Center, the Herald Mail Press Room, the City Ballet on East Franklin. As you move to the next line, this is our rental program, which was a small component of the original First Third program. We, with the 50,000 allocated, we assisted approximately 16 renters with a $300 per month subsidy on their rent in a targeted area very close to downtown, and some at $150 per month in a wider area. And it was a 1-year requirement to move into these targeted residential areas. And we were attracting a certain demographic of college grads, military personnel, USMH employees, and students. We added HCC students, degree-holding professionals, and households with area median income at 80% or higher. And they only needed to have a 1-year rental commitment for that portion. So about 16 people supported by that part. And then as we move to the next one, the downtown residency component, 70,000 was for, again, the same demographic for attraction, and for $10,000 down payment or rehab grant for properties that were built prior to 1960 and vacant for 12 months. We assisted 7 homeowners. And then the last component was citywide. With the 180,000, we supported 24 homeowners with the $7,500 down payment rehab grant. Again, with the same requirement of built prior to 1960 and vacant for 12 months. So I wanted to give you that context as to how the past program performed in quantifying it. What I included in your packet is a chart of potential components. The fund has the original $804,000 less the current year project of $250 leaves us a remaining balance of $554. And I started a working draft of what could be the potential options of configuration or components initially based on the First Third grant program. So repeating, as you look at the first 3 items are essentially a repeat of that First Third city center component, home ownership component, and citywide smaller grants. The next 3 items in the chart are based on some ideas that have been shared. The idea of a talent attraction. This is somewhat similar to the rental component, but it depends how guidelines would be developed on such a new initiative, but something that may be designed to help to attract recent college graduates, those with student debt, or looking back to the original First Third that had a component of income or an existing student military connection to USMH. And then there has also been discussions about the need for grants to offset the costs for utility upgrades related to sprinkler systems. So I included that in the chart as an option. And then the idea of grants that would help for rental property rehab to get them to market rate rental and geared more toward landlords. So I think what's important as we discuss this is making sure that we're careful to sufficiently fund programs to have effectiveness. And as you see in option A, just looking if that were to be the configuration, that would allow 2 projects at 250 and 5 to 7 projects under the home ownership, 5 to 7 properties or homeowners for $54,000. Option B then spreads this with lesser impact, but still the ability to have a broader range of components. So I think there's also the option to continue to expand this as we identify future funding, to be able to maybe start with a few components now and bring other components online as we identify potential additional funding. I would mention that outside of the First Third Grant Program, we were able to continue the home ownership grant program through taking $50,000 from our Economic Redevelopment Fund and matching it with a Community Legacy Grant. And we have been able to award out additional grants for the 7,500 citywide and the 10,000 downtown, using the state money Community Legacy. There's a limited ability for us to obtain state funding for a similar continuation of that program, due to the fact that we're looking at all of our grant applications from those sources to be geared toward the urban improvement project, at least for the coming couple of years, and cycles on our grant applications. So I wanted to give you that background and just open it up for your discussion, and we're seeking direction. I included the guidelines for the mechanics of the past programs, but once you give us some direction as to how you would like us to configure programs, we would come back to you with the guidelines and application forms for approval before we would release those and start accepting applications. So I hope this background gives you a launching point for your discussion.
I'm certainly in favor of doing something more like option B.
Same. Spreading it out, that was the goal in the first place, so.
Yep. I mean, I'm just gonna get back to my basic premise in pushing for this in the first place, and I agree option B is close to that idea, but I don't have an interest in complicating that idea further for two reasons. One is I think that a couple of these items, I'm not interested. I don't think that they're the premise of economic development. I mean, for me, the goal of this funding and generating this funding is, as I've said on a number of different occasions when we've made these efforts, is for redevelopment of the properties, the buildings, the infrastructure, not the people or the businesses that go into them, because they come and go. It's the buildings and the infrastructure that need to be solidified for whomever decides to live or operate a business in any of those properties. And recognizing that we don't have the full million, that we have, 804,000 minus 250 now. I think that those other three components need to be sustained in this first year, because everybody sort of gave something, if you will, through this application of the increase in taxes to accomplish that. And so for me, I'm not interested in the talent attraction program. I think that we're doing that to some degree now with the USMH projects that we're already participating and guaranteeing funding for rental assistance for students going there. I mean,
Yeah, that
we're already
was an
doing
idea
that.
that came from the city of, was it Hamilton or something?
I think that, yeah, there was an article that we
Yeah.
It's a good
referenced.
idea, but I just don't think we're ready for that. Yeah.
I'm not interested in the life safety code upgrade. I think that for me, again, I'm just trying to keep it simple. And the idea that I'd said originally was a landlord can get up to $7,500 if they put a minimum of $15,000 into a place for whatever rehab they identified that the place needs to make it market rate ready. It may be sprinklers, it may be HVAC, et cetera, but I'd rather not hamstring what that idea is. On the homeownership component, you know, we hear complaints from time to time that, you know, all the money is sort of spent downtown. And I'll say the same thing now that I said when we initiated the First Third grant program, is I don't agree that you get more for one place simply because it's on one block and not another. If you got a place has been vacant for 12 months, you know, that eyesore is no different in my neighborhood in the south end or your neighborhood in the north end as it is, you know, on you know, Locust Street or East Church. So for me, I think it's $7,500 toward the down payment or whatever the place needs for that prospective home buyer. You know, the last comment I'll make is I think with $804,000, recognizing you can't come up with the additional monies, I continue to believe that you cut that amount back to whatever the remainder of 600 is. So what's that? It's $350,000. And then you divide the other 200,000 left to make sure that you have, you know, 75,000 for the home ownership, the 75,000 for the small business, and maybe the 50 for the rental, to see how that goes, because that's a new component. The small business one, I'll again say, you know, recognizing that the funding isn't $1.5 million like it was in First Third, it's only $1 million. I think that the small business, and, you know, a good example, there's probably 3 examples on the sheet we received of the updates of economic development activity. It's pretty simple. We'll give them $25,000 if they put in $50,000. And so, you know, this year, that allows you to provide that to 2 or 3 small business expansion interest. And, you know, like I said, there's at least 3 on that sheet that I could identify that could use that immediately.
So on the chart that Jill brought forward, that we don't have anything on small business, so that would be a different component.
We do. It's
Oh, you do?
the citywide, First Third, the third box down.
Oh, the third box down, okay.
And those are the small
Gotcha.
grants ranging from 25 to
Okay.
50, requiring a 2-to-1 match.
And I
Okay.
think that 25
Sorry.
is a great max number.
Max
And they're
number.
putting 50, we're putting 25, that's $75,000. That's a significant amount of money into what I would deem a small business redevelopment or expansion project.
So you want to, the homeownership grant program, you want to do away with the 10,000 and just make it 75 across the board, correct?
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I like that.
Whether it's downtown or citywide.
Yeah, because we're already spending the lion's share of this funding in downtown, I mean, on these bigger projects. It's already, so I'm trying to spread it a little broader, you know, so that we aren't, you know, generating even more funding, because like I said, you know, I hear the complaint from time to time, well, we spending all the money in a 4-block area, and so I'm just trying to be as even as possible, especially on the residential side, recognizing that, you know, residential, what I want to say, abandonment knows no boundaries in this city.
Is there anything that we can create or that's within here that could be an existing rental that turns into homeownership, that there's like some kind of benefit somewhere? Where, I don't know what the parameters of that would be, but, you know, if the house was being rented and then it turned over to an owner,
So
I
the
mean.
40,000 in talent attraction that we don't want to use, we could use that or something if a house has been a rental for
Yeah,
more years and it.
Like somehow
But why wouldn't they just,
encouragement for the
just-
landlord.
why wouldn't you just make that one category then where you're eligible, whether it's vacant for 12 months or you're converting a rental to?
Well, I mean-
In other words, in other words,
Yeah.
both of them accomplish the same goal, just make both items eligible within the same funding.
Or is there something that we could do with the property owner, with the person, the landlord that's turning it over? Do you know what I mean? Like a benefit to him, her, that is selling the property. So the new homeowner is getting the incentive, the $7,500 credit, right? But is there a benefit to the
owner.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not interested in providing funding to a landlord that's selling it to somebody who wants to turn it into.
Or some kind of tax relief or
An
something,
ownership.
property tax, something. Something to encourage home ownership, so the landlord wants to sell it. That's what I'm getting at. Whether that's
Oh, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not interested in giving a landlord money to sell it to somebody, so they turn. I'm interested in giving the buyer up to
Right, I am
$7,500
too.
if they want to do that.
Yeah, so the home ownership grant program should be if it's vacant for 12 months or if it were a rental.
Or if it's converting from a
Yeah,
rental to
that's what I
a
mean.
home
If
Yeah,
it were
ownership.
vacant
right.
for 12 months, or if it were
Or
a
if it's
rental
being converted from a
converted
rental.
into a home.
Are you interested in any kind of a support for turning a multi-unit into?
Well, I think that it should be limited to that.
turning
In other words,
a
somebody's selling a
multi-unit
single that they're renting out, I mean, that's not doing anything. I think it has to be, at least minimum of 2 units. And when I got mine, it was 3 apartments, and we converted it back into a single family. So, yeah, because I think that it is significantly different in taking one that has been chopped up than it is simply going and buying one that somebody's been renting out for the last 7 years and goes, oh, now's the time to cash in. I think it's got to be at least 2 units. But I think they should have equal eligibility.
So a vacant home or a rental multi-unit that is being decreased to a single family owner occupied.
I'm fine with that. And I still think that allotment for this year, well, I know that's where the argument's gonna be, but I still think that should be $75,000.
I'm at 400 for the first category, 75 for the second, and 75 for the third. That
Is
makes
that-
it, that makes it
I would
550.
I would be good with that, except for the third category, I'd like to lower the requirements, the minimum 25 to like minimum 10,000. Because I mean, some of these small businesses and storefronts don't need $75,000 worth of upgrades.
But that's up to 25.
No, this
grants
says
from a
from a
minimum
minimum
of
of
25.
And what I'm saying is mine is a maximum of 25.
I would be fine with that. That's
In
what
other
I'm
words,
saying.
there's
I think
no-
it should be
I'd be okay with that,
lower.
too.
Right.
I think it
It'd
should
be
be.
good
If you wanna
to
set a minimum of
floor.
10, that's
It'd be good
fine.
to set a floor.
But I'm at
Yeah,
a maximum
10,
of
that way there's
25.
at least 30,000, because it's 2 to 1, right? Is what we're asking. So if we set the minimum at 10, that would mean 30,000 going into building. I think that's a substantial for a small business in some of these smaller,
I'm fine with 10 to 25.
me too. And I was fine with 4, 75 and 75 as well.
So that leaves nothing for the rentals then
No.
this year.
So you're saying 75,000 for the first category? I'm sorry,
350.
350.
That's 600,000 of 800,000, or 75% of the total for the year.
I'm okay with that in order to get it down to the rental property.
That's where I'm at.
Well, I would be fine with that too.
Yeah. I think that divides it up. I think that, covers everything. There's a piece for everyone.
And I think the reality is, if there's something big that comes in, we have greater flexibility to find, some mechanism to possibly assist with that through the movement of funds later in the course of the year than we do now to set the parameters of this program.
And that's, I only have one
You know what I'm
question,
saying?
and only one question, and that's, without getting into the actual discussions with that executive committee, when we decided to get this money, when I hear the discussion, it almost sounds like there has been an agreement without any discussion that one of the entities that we identified that may be requiring 6 figures would be, just so we all understand, under this formula, is cut out of a potential from this money. Is that my
No.
understanding?
I
Because
think
there's
if there's
350 in the big
350,
one.
then that's
Okay, that's fine.
And I'm only aware of,
Okay, no.
2, one of which we already
You
said
answered the
yes to.
question, that's great.
See what I'm saying? So
No,
there's
that's
still
fine.
100,000 left.
I still think we're still okay.
That's fine, that's fine. That's my only concern,
Makes
and
sense.
I'm fine with everything.
Now, at
you
least the
all said.
one sort of,
I understand,
would still get.
gotcha,
It just, you're down to 100 then
right.
for the other
If that's
projects.
the go, yeah, if that's the direction you take.
I'm absolutely fine with what.
But there's no other for sures that I'm,
I
No.
understood.
or even close to for sures that I'm aware of.
They
What
would
am I-
still-
what am I
They would still
missing
have
if-
to go through the
They would
process.
apply.
They
If
would
the
have
first-
to apply, and they would have to meet every condition of that.
The
That
first
doesn't mean
category is only
anybody
350.
would be
right.
guaranteed anything at this point.
The
Then
homeownership
homeownership.
75, which is 10 houses.
Okay,
The third category is 75,
gotcha.
which is minimum of 3 small business,
Mhm.
right?
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then 50 for.
And
And
then
then
the rental
50
property.
for the rental.
Oh, for the last one down
That's
here?
right.
very
for the-
last.
For the landlords to rehab. I mean, I'm thinking of, and I
Are we gonna
I don't
do
know if
2
I
to
say
1
the
on
name
that
wrong,
one as
but, the place here on East Franklin. You know, he redid it, then it burned, and then I mean, that's what you're looking for, right? You know, and I realize that it takes a lot more money than that. I'm just trying to
Right.
create, you know,
Are we gonna do 2 to 1 on that one as well?
That's
So
my opinion.
75 if you put at least 15 in, so that would be
Yes,
23.
there has to
20, yeah,
be
22,
skin in the game,
5.
which I hate using.
that's right.
Yeah.
Up to 7,500 if you put a minimum of 15 in.
What are you snorting for?
And then, that's 20-some $1,000 invested in, you know, apartment building, you're making market rate rental. And I realize it may already be that,
Understood.
but, you know, going from 600 a month to 900 a month is, I think, going to generate interest to some degree of these other, I don't know, socially segmented categories you've identified.
With,
I want to talk about continuation of funding, is what I want to talk about. Continually funding this program in the future. I mean, you know, whether we're using leftover general funds that aren't being expended, and instead of going into the general fund, reserve fund, to go into this program, to keep this program funded, or whatever. But I mean, there has to be a discussion about, okay, how do we create a program that continually gets funded every year, or in the process of that budget year?
Well, I mean,
Well, the way this is set up, it's the tax rate, so.
I understand, so
if
know
the-
about next year.
If the instruction from the body of council would be that Michelle always has to take that amount of dollars to put towards this, because that's out of the tax rate, that would be done first. Now, that doesn't mean you're still not gonna have a hole in your budget, which you likely will, but that would be a way to say that you're funding this every year.
That's right, and then it's up to us to decide when
Yeah.
it's budget
Yeah.
time.
Because
do
you're,
we have-
you're
do we
still
have
gonna
the
have a hole.
stamina to do
Exactly.
it?
But you know as well as I do that every year, when there's money left over, it goes directly in the general fund reserve, and then you have to fight about, well, it's general fund reserve money, we can't
No,
utilize it for.
no, you're exactly right, Mayor, but you first have to close your books, and you first have to understand whether or not you have a
Understand.
surplus, because you may not have a surplus.
May not,
You may
and
be
when-
deducting from your fund
And
balance,
that'll be,
So, but if
we'll
you
know for
have-
sure on that come up too.
very
right?
soon. So if you have your surplus, yes, naturally, it goes into your fund balance, that's where it has to go. But council can still direct that money
goes
comes
into-
out of your
That's
fund
all I'm
You
balance.
know,
saying.
it's a lot,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to take money out of the fund balance if we know that what we're taking out is the same amount that we just put in. That-
Yeah, so, but
Right.
until you close your books and
No,
you
no,
know
I
how you.
totally understand.
I'd like to take a look at us looking at or thinking of the possibility of earmarking the admissions and amusement tax to go to this development fund.
Mich- I don't know if
That
Michelle.
would have to be a conversation we would have to have, because, you know, that goes into the general fund currently, which pays other things. So
Right.
you have to take that out of the general fund.
I don't think it's anywhere near this amount, is it?
Well,
What was it last year for A&A tax, Michelle? Any idea?
Close to $300,000.
Thought it was close to 3.
Which was a big jump up. Typically, we were getting around 200. 18 and 17 were the first time we got that high.
and the second part of that is looking closely at the Arts and Entertainment District and determining if we want to continue exempting.
Well, and I don't know that, and I read your email, I read Kristen's response. I don't think we need to do away with the A&E district, but does anything in there preclude us from working out a separate deal with the Maryland Theater or, you know, whatever, you know, like we do with the pilot program that we use on other properties that are tax exempt?
Because if you want that tax exempt status, you've got to file for it. So there's nothing to preclude an entity from not filing for that.
Well, they'd have to agree to that. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
it'd be a negotiation.
The arts, yeah, right. I mean,
Well,
that's what the district is for, so that they get those benefits.
Yeah, but what's the negotiation?
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm trying to figure out
I don't think what
in
would
the
they.
conversation, what a negotiation would even be. We're gonna get rid of A&E if they don't agree, because I have no interest in getting rid of A&E. So for me, I don't have a position of negotiation.
And remember, we did,
I
they
think we have a
they
position
still
of
very well,
negotiation.
they still may be tax exempt, even if, yeah, they still may not have to pay it anyway. So, right?
I mean, we just gave $1.5 million to the Maryland Theater. I think we have a very strong negotiating tool.
But we committed to that.
I'm not saying we didn't, Kristen, I'm just saying that in future years, if, you know, this is still the people's money that you're spending, and there should be a return, and if there's a small return that helps offset that 1.5 million, even if it's over the course of 10 years or 15 years or whatever, I'm not saying that shouldn't be out of the possibilities. That's all. I'm not saying that it's you know, that we don't do that anymore. I'm just saying there should be some way that we can recover some funds to go back to the people.
And it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't take anything away from the Maryland Theater, because it basically gives us additional funds to contribute to the Maryland Theater.
That's which we could, yeah.
Or to contribute to economic development. You know,
All things for a great discussion in the future.
Yep.
Anything else on this?
Jill, do you?
It's
Jill,
good
Jill.
clarity and direction. It's exactly what we needed. We will develop the guidelines that correspond with each of these programs. We'll take a look at the past guidelines for the first third program, see if they need any adjustment, bring those back to you, as well as develop guidelines for the new rental property rehab.
Yes.
And modify based on the minimums and the adjustments that you talked about.
One of the things that I would like to see, because I think it gets to that question of the fortitude of this body and future bodies to make that concerted decision during budget time to sustain this effort for exactly, or with, you know, with the premise and you know, exactly as part of the adjustment in the rate was intended, is to include the demolition portion. I think that's what, a penny on the rate? All I'm saying is if the better you package those as a component of economic development, because I feel like that's sort of the fourth of these, you know, several fronts, the more solidified it makes it in future budgetary deliberations to say, hey, you know, this is what these 4 pennies are for. Which one of these do you want to, you know, are you gonna, you know, take it from? Because I think that makes it that much harder for an elected body to say, well, we're gonna take it from any part of that, if it's all part of one item.
Good.
And I'm glad Jonathan is here because, and when we talked about, because I noticed that demolition wasn't in these categories anywhere. I mean, are CD funds available for demolition of
We have
properties?
some in the
We have
budget.
additional funds for fiscal year 19 out of CDBG as well as general
The
fund.
general fund.
Yes.
I'm saying I think you should lump the general fund portion into this. I think it's part and parcel to these categories of redevelopment.
And how much is that in general fund money that we have allocated for demolition? Was it 150?
I want to say 150, but was, Michelle, do you know if it's higher, was it higher than that this year for general fund? 150. And then what did we end up with CDBG? 100, so yeah, 250.
Because there's more strength.
Right.
Happens to the property once you demo it.
Yeah.
Especially
But,
the
but we
CD,
could
right.
still use it for demo, but we just have to follow the
Okay.
streams.
Cool.
Yep. That's
So
more
do
than
we-
we,
do-
that's
do
more
we
than we've
wanna-
had for demo in a while.
Do we want to bundle the 150 general fund in this program that's already allocated for this year?
I'm arguing that it should be because I think they are a package.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm asking the rest of the council, do you want to, would you rather add
We
that
already
into this
approved it.
program to beef up this program to be able to offer that as part of the package?
Well, I guess I have to think, I mean, you have to think that through a little bit. I mean, are we gonna then say we're gonna have people making applications to use demolition money? Or do we control the demolition through our code enforcement and force it that way? I mean, I think you have to be, that would be, I could see putting the money in the program and saying this money is from tax dollars and this is what we're using it for. But you really don't wanna necessarily have applications from people. I mean, I think you need, I think you need.
We're setting the parameters for each one of these, however we want to set the parameters.
Yeah, which would be the code enforcement. So all you're doing is listing the money together in the program.
Because I think it makes it harder for an elected body than to pick off which ones they want to funnel to something else for.
Yeah.
And in terms of the name of the program, I did include that in the memo, to continue to use the Invest Hagerstown First
I
Third
think you should get rid of that part.
naming, or come
Just
up with.
Invest
I like
Hagerstown.
Invest Hagerstown.
Invest
Yeah.
Hagerstown.
Yeah,
Yep.
never liked
And it has its various subcomponents.
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay,
yep, just invest Hagerstown.
very good.
Very appealing.
I think it is too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Slogan.
City Administrator,
Nothing this evening.
Ms. Keller? Mr. Arshire?
I had something and I forget at the moment, so
I'll come back to you if you
Okay,
think
that's
of it.
that's fine.
Mr.
I'll be
Heffernan?
like Emily today.
Just one thing, it was a letter we received from Mark Halsey about the parking for.
Student parking.
Student parking. And one of the things I didn't realize when I was reading that, you know, our preliminary information and we voted on the, all the parking changes, was the impact it would have on students. Taking them from $41 a semester up to $256 or $250-something per semester, or $500 a year. And it, again, I went back and looked at the figures, and it kind of just glossed over that. It said, you know, we'll ask students to buy a regular parking pass, and the magnitude of that. The magnitude of that didn't really dawn on me until I went back. We got Mark Halsey's letter, and I went back and looked at it. So I don't know if if that was just me that missed that, or I did not realize that
No, I
was
mean,
going to have that.
we talked pretty much about the student discounts because the part of the idea is the health of the fund and treating people equally. Now, the university always has an option to support their students and help them pay for parking. That would be up to the university. But the parking fund itself has to be self-sustaining. And to give those sort of large discounts like that just doesn't make sense anymore.
And the
For
large
what-
discounts were put in place back when the university
For what we
was
need
first
to
opened
do
up.
for the parking fund and for
14 years ago.
the idea of a new parking deck and those sort of things. So that was the idea behind it.
If you're a student that takes classes typically after hours, you're
free.
not subject to buying that. And I think you gotta put in that context is, you're talking about X number of students, how many students does that apply to for how many days a week? Because while I realize that's sort of the extreme number, you know what I mean, and ours is sort of the lowest number, I would imagine for most students, it's somewhere in between there where some say, oh, well, I got 3 night classes a week, that way I don't. And then, you know, during the days I go in and I pump my, you know, $2.50 into the meter for the hour and a half that I'm there and I cruise. I would just have to imagine that for most students, they're savvy enough to figure out how it's not gonna be $500, and are probably doing it to some degree right now to figure out how it's not even
Close to that.
that figure.
Yeah.
I just have to.
And again, you know, it's just the idea of, you know, I appreciate Mr. Halsey's comments, but, you know, he's asking us to have our parking fund really not work in the fashion that it should as an enterprise fund. And it has to be self-sustaining.
I would assume that the only students that, in my opinion, that I can think that extreme would apply to, and I can see how it would, would be the students that are housed over here in our student housing.
They're living here.
They're living here.
Yeah, they need a
They're living
place
here,
to
so I
park
can
24
believe
hours.
that they would.
Well, if that's the case, we can find another way to
No,
address that, right?
I fully understand that, Christian, because I agree with what you're saying. I mean, and how many students are going to university system during the day, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week that would
Right.
require combined
No,
pass?
yeah.
But I do understand that the students here, and I think that's something that we could look at. That's
Just like we
it.
did
I
over
plan
here.
on putting together a meeting with Mark and Eric and sit down and
It's a good idea.
try to figure out
Yeah.
real numbers.
Yeah, who's
I
really
agree with
affected?
you, though, that email, seeing the numbers actually written out was alarming.
Yeah, again, I went back and looked at it, and it was like, ooh, I missed that one, but, it just didn't dawn on me.
So we'll come back to you with some information.
Just a couple brief things. One, I want to, I'm very sorry I missed it. I had to be in court today, but Dr. Alexander becoming captain, I've always felt that the city has been blessed to have somebody who decided to get a PhD in our city police department. I wonder how many police departments nationwide have PhDs in their force. It's something to be proud of. The urban improvement project is actually happening. It's amazing to see what the Maryland Theater looks like today and come to the realization they're really doing it, you know? That we're past the time of not doing it.
Right.
And the last thing, I'm just curious when we talk about budgets, when we're gonna get an update on how the Blues Fest did this year.
Actually, possibly next week, but if not next week, okay.
Good.
You'll be ready next week,
Right.
okay.
Looking forward
Well,
to it.
there you go.
Thank you.
So with the summer weather, and now that I am a councilwoman, I have been getting complaints about ATVs and dirt bikes riding all throughout the neighborhoods. The chief, I've been having email exchanges with the chief, and I wasn't sure if there was, what kind of enforcement or what kind of ordinance that we have as a city. I don't know if it's that these guys, girls, folks are, need somewhere to ride. Is it, because they live in the city and they don't have these open spaces to ride these ATVs, but it's very loud, it's very obnoxious, it's very dangerous, and when people are, when the police are called, they're cutting through neighborhoods and outrunning, which is easy, but it's very disruptive and it's very scary to a lot of the neighbors. So is there anything in code or law that says that you're not allowed to do something like that?
Well, state law, there's state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if,
It's
Yeah.
catching them.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Passed the opposite direction on Salem Avenue the other day, just a kid with a bandana, he must have been going 60 on this little dirt bike. just
Yeah.
Flying up Salem Avenue. So I know that the school camera got him, because it was like Thursday.
so
But he doesn't
again,
have a tag, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah, probably not.
so and then, I think when the police try to get them, they end up parking in their driveway and they didn't do anything. So, again, I mean, is there space that they need in order to ride these things?
I think you see it's across the country.
It is.
It is
I was gonna
an
say, we have
area.
It's
same
across
thing in
the country.
Myersville. They come down into the
Everything.
park, they go back behind the neighborhoods.
Yep.
We put up signs,
Then you got a lot of open country in Myersville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There used to be, and I don't know,
You just
some of you
confiscate and
remember it, but out off Howell Road, we did have a dirt track back there, a
Yeah.
dirt bike track. And, of course, it closed down after, and they held races and everything else, but, unfortunately, properties change hands and all those things happen.
Along those lines, Mayor, could you see if you could get us an update, I have the feeling that it probably went absolutely nowhere, but some time ago, I thought we had a fascinating discussion about the use of drones. I'm assuming it never got off first base, but I'd be curious to find out. It fits in with what you're saying, because the
Yeah,
only
then we can
only
find
way
them.
you're gonna enforce that kind of stuff is with something like a drone. because I don't think the police have any desire to get involved in a high-speed chase.
They definitely don't want to do that.
No, they don't want to do
And the only way to track them is something like that, where you can track them and see where they go to and get it at that stage.
Or use your see something, send something happen.
Yeah, that's what I've
Let them know
been-
where they're at.
That's what I've
You
been
know.
saying. I
You see them
just-
parked in the driveway, take a picture and let HPD know. You know, I mean, listen, there's not a simple answer to this, and there hasn't been
No.
all these summers that this happens.
I
okay?
know.
You know, what bothers me, and it's never been about, you know, having somebody on a dirt bike on the street that's obeying the speed limit, obeying the laws. That's never been a problem for me. But I could care less, because first off, you wouldn't know. It's when they're riding on the sidewalk, or they're blowing through stop signs. You know, I mean, we had one come up Park Lane and broadsided a Mercedes on Oak Hill. I mean, you know, and that
Where it's
individual
midnight.
was, yeah, I mean, you know, so those are the problems. Listen, I mean, going from point A to point B, I've never had a problem with that. If somebody needs to get out of the city to go to their place where they want to ride in the country someplace, I don't care. If you're obeying the law and doing the speed limit and obeying all applicable laws, who cares? But you're not doing that. That's the problem. I mean, you know, again, they're riding on the sidewalks and they're blowing through stop signs at 65 miles an hour. And, you know, I mean,
Someone's
that's a
gonna
problem.
end up getting
Oh, yeah.
hurt badly.
Well, we had one who was hurt badly just 2-3 years ago, at Oak Hill. So, I mean, you know, or Hamilton, one of those two streets out there. So, yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. So, and then it'll be, you know, the driver's of the vehicle's fault, because, you know,
Yeah.
that's just what it'll be, whether it's true or not. So yeah, so there's I like Lou, I'll reach out to the drone guy. And,
Curious.
See where we're at.
That's something.
I mean, it's been 6 months, I guess.
I know that there was a meeting and the airport folks were taking the lead on working with them.
Good.
But there were a lot of complications.
Oh, there's
Oh,
no
yeah,
doubt.
there's-
Especially with governmental entities.
No question. I
So-
totally
Oh, I can only
understand.
imagine.
The hope of being able to do that is slim, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean we don't keep looking into it. But
Right.
there's just so, especially when you're a
Well,
government, it's different for a private entity, but for a government to start using drones, it's just a whole different world.
Well, and Chief Kiefer, I don't know if there's something that can be brought up. I won't be at the next community dialogue circle, but that may be a good place to start, is to speak to the youth. I don't think that conversation has come up. And of course, we can't ask the moderator to do that, but it may be something to ask, you know, the youth, something that they can help us create some kind of policy or something. Just it's worth a conversation.
I actually don't have anything else to add, so thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Kristen, I'm sorry. Did you figure out, remember what you were doing? Okay. All right, we're adjourned then, thanks. Good job.